y buenos días. Today we're going to learn how to talk about regular verbs in the preterite. We use the preterite tense to talk about the past, things that have happened in the past. All of the endings for these verbs that we're going to learn today use the same endings, which is why they're all considered regular verbs. Some of them may have spelling changes, often to maintain the pronunciation, but they're all going to use the same endings that you're seeing here. So, the endings for AR verbs, las terminaciones de los verbos de AR son e con acento, aste, o con acento, amos, asteis y aron. Las terminaciones de los verbos de ER e IR, these endings for ER and IR verbs are the same. So they're I con acento, iste, yo con acento en la O, imos, istes e yeron. These endings are going to work for all of the verbs that we're talking about today. Most verbs in the preterite use this without changing anything for spelling, but there are a few that have spelling changes. One of the spelling changes you'll notice is you replace an I with a Y. So we place an Y con una I. We only do this in the third person forms, which would be las formas de él y ellos. So, leer means to read. Creer es to believe. Oír es to hear. Construir es to build and to construct. Caerse bien, which is a reflexive verb, means to get along well with. Caerse mal means to not get along well with. And then caerse by itself, also a reflexive verb, means to fall. Incluir es to include. Y concluir is to conclude or to come to the conclusion. These verbs still use, you'll notice that they're all ER or IR, so they're still using these endings. However, we're going to make some spelling changes in the third person, which would be the él, ella, usted, and the ellos, ellas, ustedes. So right here, we're going to do this. So here's an example. We have leí. You'll notice that both leer and oír have extra accents on them in the preterite. Okay, so we have an accent here, we have an accent here, we have an accent here. And that's to maintain the pronunciation. So here we have leo. In the Spanish language, they don't like to have 3 or more vowels together. So what they want to do is they want to keep this pronunciation leo, but they want to make these vowels separate. Now, what is the only letter in Spanish that sounds like E, but instead of being a vowel is a consonant? And of course, it's Y. So, to split up those vowels, but to maintain the pronunciation, we just have a simple spelling change. It becomes leo. Here, of course, we see 3 vowels together again. We want to keep the pronunciation leeron, so we just replace the I with a Y. We still are pronouncing it the same, leeron, leeron, but we've given it a spelling change to separate that group of vowels. So I'll do this first one with you. He believed would normally be creyó. We have 3 vowels together here. Spanish doesn't like to have more than 2 vowels together, so we're replacing our I with a Y, and our verb, spelled correctly but pronounced the same, is creyó. You can fill the rest of this out yourself. All right. Actividad 3, para hablar del pasado. These are words that we're going to use to say how long ago we did something. Ayer es yesterday. Anteayer is the day before yesterday, or 2 days ago. Hace 3 días is 3 days ago. So here we're using hace to mean ago. So of course you could put any number here, right? Hace 5 días, 5 days ago. Hace 10 días, 10 days ago. Hace 3 semanas is 3 weeks ago. And once again, you can replace this number 3 with any number to say how many weeks ago it was. Hace 3 meses is 3 months ago. Hace un año is 1 year ago. And of course, you can replace this. Hace 2 años, 2 years ago. En el pasado means in the past. La semana pasada is last week. Literally, that means the week past, the past week. So it means last week. El verano pasado is last summer. And el invierno pasado is last winter. You could use this with any season, right? Last spring, last fall. You can also use this with month, last month. And el año pasado is last year. Okay, the last thing that we're going to learn, these are still regular verbs because they're still using these endings that we have here. This is a special group of AR verbs called kar, gar, zar. Kar, gar, zar verbs are any verbs that end in car, like buscar, har, like jugar, or car, like almorzar. Now, these are still going to use these same endings that we have here for all of our AR verbs. The only thing that's going to happen is we are going to have a spelling change in the yo form. The reason we have the spelling change is to maintain the pronunciation. Let me show you how this would work. We have buscar, which means to look for. The for is included in the verb. You don't need to say buscar para. It's just buscar as to look for or to search for. So if we conjugated this normally, suddenly we have the pronunciation busé, but we need to keep the pronunciation of buscar. We need to keep that k sound. We need it to be busque. Well, what's another way in Spanish that we can make a k sound? Busque. Ku-u. Now, it doesn't change in any form other than the yo form. So it stays the same for the tu form, the el, ella, usted form, etc. It only changes in the yo form. All right, let's look at the verb jugar. If we did this regularly, we suddenly have the word jugué, but we need to keep it jugué with a hard G. So to indicate that this is still a hard G, we add a U after it, which tells Spanish speakers that instead of a he sound, it's a ge sound. Instead of ha, it's ga to keep jugar. So what we're doing here is we're changing the spelling in order to maintain the correct pronunciation. Let's look at a zar verb. Almorzar is to eat lunch. If we conjugated this in the regular yo form, we would have almorcé. But we need to keep this sound s. We have two options in Spanish to make a s sound. And in this case, we are always going to use this one, almorcé. So up here, I put the rules for you, okay? La regla, the rule. Las conjugaciones son regulares. The conjugations are regular, excepto las formas de yo. Okay, so you're still doing this without any spelling changes at all in every form except the yo form. Now the yo form, we're still going to use this e con acento, but we're going to change the consonant so that we can keep the sound that we want. All car verbs go to que in the yo form. All gar verbs go to ge in the yo form, and all zar verbs go to se in the yo form. So let's talk about some of these verbs. Buscar means to look for or to search for. Pecar es to sin or to commit a sin. Atacar is to attack. Sacar is to take out, like to take out a pencil for a test or to take out the trash. Tocar has two meanings. It's to touch, but it's also to play music or to play instruments. Practicar is to practice. And all of these car verbs are going to do this spelling change in the yo form in order to maintain the correct pronunciation. Now let's look at our gar verbs. Jugar es to play, as in to play games or sports. Llegar es to arrive. Pagar es to pay or to pay for. The for is included in the verb. Pegar es to hit. Castigar is to punish. That's related to the English word to castigate, which is an old-fashioned way of saying to punish. Conjugar is to conjugate, like we conjugate verbs. And apagar is to turn off, like you turned off the car or you turned off the light. And now let's look at our zar verbs. Almorzar is to eat lunch. Comenzar and empezar both mean to begin or to start. Cruzar is to cross, as in you cross the street to get to the supermarket. Abrazar is to hug, and that's related to the English word to embrace. Lanzar is to throw. And organizar is to organize. And then here you've got some practices to do. Now again, our cargar-zar verbs and our yo and yeron verbs still use these regular endings, so they're still considered regular verbs. We change the y verbs in this form to maintain the pronunciation, but we have a spelling change because we don't like to have more than two vowels together. We don't like three or more vowels together, so we split them up with a consonant that has the same pronunciation, which would be the consonant Y. And our cargar-zar verbs, we're still using all of these regular spellings except in the yo form, and once again, it's to maintain the correct pronunciation. Otherwise, that E would make all of those consonants soft, and we want to keep them hard. So we want to keep the C as a K and not a S. We want to keep the G as a G and not a H. And we want to keep the Z as a S and not a Z. All right, I hope this helps. Those are our regular preterite verbs.